when a power-hungry judge slapped Pam Bondi with a $500 fine for daring to wear a cross in his courtroom, he thought he'd break her. Instead, he unleashed a firestorm. Pam fought back with razor-sharp wit and unshakable defiance, turning a petty fine into a brutal showdown that exposed his tyranny and her brilliance. Sparks flew, gavel slammed, and the law itself hung in the balance. Who'd blink first in this clash of wills? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping legal moments. Pam Bondi walked into the courtroom that morning with her usual confidence. She had a case to argue, a client to defend, and years of experience as a tough prosecutor under her belt. The day started like any other. She wore a simple suit, her hair pulled back, and around her neck hung a small gold cross, a quiet symbol of her faith that she'd worn for years. It wasn't flashy or loud. It was just there, part of who she was. But that cross was about to spark a firestorm nobody saw coming, least of all Judge Samuel Prescott. The courtroom buzzed with usual chatter as lawyers shuffled papers and clerks called out cases. Judge Prescott sat high on his bench, his stern face peering down like he owned the place. He'd been on the bench for decades, known for his iron grip on his courtroom and his no-nonsense attitude. Some called him fair, others called him a tyrant. Pam didn't care either way. She'd faced worse than him in her career. She stepped up to the podium to begin her argument when Prescott's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Counselor Bondi," he barked, his eyes narrowing. "What's that around your neck?" Pam paused, caught off guard. She touched the cross instinctively. "It's a necklace, Your Honor, a cross." Prescott leaned forward, his tone dripping with disdain. "A cross? This is a courtroom, not a church. You're here to practice law, not preach religion. That's inappropriate attire. I'm fining you $500 for violating courtroom decorum." The room went dead silent. Lawyers froze mid-sentence. The clerk's pen stopped scratching. Pam's client, a small business owner named Tom Riley, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Pam stood there, her jaw tightening. She wasn't the type to back down, not from a fight, and definitely not from a judge throwing his weight around. "Excuse me, Your Honor," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "You're fining me for wearing a necklace?" "Don't question me, Miss Bondi," Prescott snapped, slamming his gavel. "I set the rules here. That cross is a distraction and a statement. Remove it or pay the fine. Your choice." Pam's eyes flashed with fire. She squared her shoulders and stepped closer to the podium. "With all due respect, Judge, I'm not removing it. This isn't about decorum. It's about my rights. You don't get to dictate what I wear around my neck just because you don't like it." Prescott's face turned red. "You're out of line. This is my courtroom, and I say what's appropriate. You think you can waltz in here with your little symbol and defy me? Pay the fine, or I'll hold you in contempt." "Contempt?" Pam shot back, her voice rising. "For what? Expressing my faith? Last I checked, the Constitution still applies in this building. You're overstepping, and you know it." The gallery murmured. Lawyers exchanged wide-eyed glances. Prescott pounded his gavel again, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Silence! I won't have this insolence. You're a lawyer, not a martyr. Pay the $500 or you're done here today." Pam didn't flinch. She leaned forward, her voice cutting like a blade. "I'm not paying a dime. You want to talk about insolence? How about a judge abusing his power to bully someone over a necklace? You're not upholding justice. You're throwing a tantrum." The courtroom erupted. People whispered furiously. Prescott's clerk looked like she wanted to disappear. Tom Riley gripped the edge of his seat, unsure if his lawyer was about to win his case or land in jail. Prescott stood up, towering over the bench, his voice booming. "You're treading on thin ice, Bondi. One more word and I'll have you hauled out of here in cuffs. You think you're above the law?" "No, Judge," Pam fired back. "But I know I'm not beneath it either. You don't get to strip me of my rights because you're having a bad day. Find me all you want. I'm not bowing to this nonsense." Prescott glared at her, his chest heaving. "You'll find $1,000 now. Keep talking and it'll be more. Sit down and shut up or I'll end this hearing right now." Pam crossed her arms, standing her ground. "Go ahead and end it. I'll appeal your ruling faster than you can sign the order." "You're not intimidating me, Your Honor. You're just proving my point. This is personal, not legal." The tension hung thick in the air. Prescott sat back down, his eyes locked on Pam. For a moment, it seemed like he might actually call the bailiff. But then he waved a hand, dismissing her defiance. We're moving on. Argue your case, Miss Bondi, and keep that attitude in check. Pam smirked faintly, knowing she'd rattled him. She turned to her notes and launched into her argument for Tom Riley's case, a dispute over a contract with a supplier who'd stiffed him for $50,000. Her words were sharp, her logic airtight. She laid out the evidence, signed agreements, emails, payment records. She tore apart the supplier's defense, pointing out every inconsistency with the precision of a surgeon. Your Honor, she said, her tone now calm but commanding, the contract is clear. My client paid on time every time. The supplier breached the deal, not Mr. Riley. The law doesn't bend for excuses, it bends for facts, and the facts are on our side. The opposing counsel, a nervous man named Greg Harper, stumbled through his response. Your Honor, my client had issues with delivery schedules and Mr. Riley didn't cooperate. Didn't cooperate? Pam interrupted, pouncing. Your client's emails show he confirmed every delivery date. You're grasping at straws, Greg. Don't waste the court's time with fairy tales. Harper flushed. That's not true. We have testimony? Pam cut in, her voice rising again. You mean that vague statement from your client's buddy who wasn't even there? Come on, Greg, you're embarrassing yourself. Prescott banged his gavel. Enough, Miss Bondi. Let him finish. Pam raised an eyebrow. Finish what? Lying? I'll wait. Harper sputtered, but his argument fell apart. Prescott listened, his expression souring as Pam's points landed harder than Harper's excuses. She didn't just argue, she dominated. Every word was a hammer, every sentence a nail in the supplier's case. By the time she sat down, Harper looked like he'd been run over. Prescott rubbed his temples, clearly irritated. I'll take this under advisement. Court's adjourned for now. He stood and stormed off the bench, leaving the room buzzing. Word of the showdown spread fast. By the next day, lawyers in the courthouse were whispering about Pam Bondi taking on Prescott and winning, at least in spirit. But Prescott wasn't done. He doubled down, filing a formal complaint against Pam with the state bar, accusing her of disrespecting judicial authority over the cross incident. He wanted her reprimanded, maybe even suspended. It was a bold move, and it lit a match under an already tense situation. Pam got the complaint in her office that afternoon. She read it, her lips curling into a grim smile. He's really doing this, she muttered to herself. She called her friend and fellow attorney Lisa Carter to vent. He's lost his mind, Pam said over the phone, pacing her office. A complaint? For wearing a cross and calling out his garbage ruling? This is war now. Lisa laughed. You shook him up, Pam. He's scared of you. That's why he's hitting back like this. He should be scared, Pam replied, her voice hard. I'm not letting this slide. He wants a fight. I'll give him one he won't forget. The next hearing was a week later. Pam walked in, the cross still around her neck, defiance in every step. Prescott eyed her as she approached the podium, his complaint hanging between them like a loaded gun. You've seen the bar complaint, I assume? Prescott said, his tone icy. I have, Pam replied, meeting his gaze. And I'm not here to grovel. You want to punish me for standing up to you? Go ahead. But I'm not backing down, Prescott smirked. This isn't about punishment, Miss Bondi. It's about respect. You don't seem to have any respect. Pam laughed bitterly. You fined me for a necklace and threw a fit when I wouldn't kiss your ring. That's not respect, it's ego. You're mad because I didn't roll over? You're insolent, Prescott roared, slamming his fist on the bench. You think you can defy me and walk away clean? I'll have your license for this. Try it, Pam shot back, her voice ringing out. You've got no grounds and you know it. The bar laughed this complaint out of the room. You're bluffing, and I'm calling it. The gallery gasped. Prescott's face twisted with rage. You're done, Bondi. I'll see you disbarred if it's the last thing I do. Good luck with that, Pam said coolly. You'll need more than threats to take me down. I've been fighting bigger bullies than you since I started. Prescott seethed, but Pam didn't give him a chance to respond. She turned to her case, diving into Tom Riley's defense with even more fire than before. She shredded Harper's weak rebuttals, citing case law and statutes with razor-sharp accuracy. Prescott couldn't hide his frustration. Every time he tried to interrupt, Pam had an answer ready, a precedent to throw back in his face. Your Honor, she said at one point, if you'd let me finish, you'd see the supplier's claim doesn't hold water. Or do you just not like hearing the truth? Prescott glared. Watch your tone, counselor. My tone's fine, Pam replied. It's your ruling I'm worried about. By the end, Harper sat defeated, and even Prescott seemed rattled. He issued his ruling later that day. Tom Riley won. The supplier had to pay up. Pam had crushed it, cross and all. But the victory wasn't just about the case. It was about exposing Prescott's overreach. Word got out, and the legal community started talking. Some praised Pam's guts. Others questioned Prescott's judgment. The bar complaint went nowhere. A panel reviewed it and tossed it out within weeks, calling it baseless. Prescott's reputation took a hit. Lawyers started filing motions to recuse him from their cases, citing bias. Pam's name, meanwhile, grew louder. She'd faced down a judge, stood her ground, and proved her brilliance in the heat of battle. Years later, people still talked about that day. Pam Bondi, the lawyer who wore a cross and turned a fine into a fight and won. Prescott retired not long after, his legacy tainted. Pam kept practicing, her cross still around her neck, a quiet reminder of the day she showed the world what she was made of.